I'm an amateur guitarist and I'm trying to get better at lead guitar, and I just want to talk about a few things that have been helpful so far. It's only been a week in my journey, but I'm really seeing some good progress. Again, I'm also seeing that a month is not necessarily going to make a huge dent, but I think it's going to make me a lot better, just even getting me started on that path and understanding what I need to practice. So if you want insights from a pro guitarist, go somewhere else. But if you want to see how somebody intermediate guitarist who's hit a plateau and is trying to get better and seeing what works and giving you just some insights on what's working for me, what I'm trying, what I'm adjusting, then that's what this is for. I called this no small trick because I see a lot of YouTube videos out there where they're saying one small trick and this will fix your playing, one small trick and this will fix your playing. And it's so enticing, and I click all of them and they're always very helpful. But what I've learned through all of this is that there really is no small trick. The small trick is the basics really well. And that, while that sounds so simple, it actually takes a ton of time. And so that's what I'm realizing is what they understand is how to connect those basic major and minor scales, the pentatonics, the triads, knowing what the relative note values are for each of those. So if you're playing in G major, knowing where the second, the third is, the minor third, the flat seven, the seven, knowing where all of that is on the fretboard, all over the fretboard, knowing how to flip in and out of the different triads, and doing that really fluidly. And then doing that for each chord in the progression, and then knowing how to target the notes as you're working through them. And so in a way, it's very simple. It's just these like very basic, the scales, and understanding how the scales apply and playing them fluidly and connectedly. But as I've discovered over just even a week of really focusing on that, that's a very hard task that can take years, I'm sure, to really master. Even right now, just going through, I already kind of knew the pentatonic shapes fairly well. I just didn't know what the hell they were. I didn't know where anything was, and I didn't know the major scales. I didn't even know where the triads were within them. And what I've discovered already is just trying to find the triads simply within the bar chords and the cage shapes that I already knew. It took hours of time just really thinking through it, slowly plotting through it, and then slowly got faster and faster, and then slowly I was understanding where the 1 was, where the 3 was, where the 5 was, and it took time, and I'm still not getting it quickly. It's getting faster and faster every time. And so what I'm realizing is it's just that simple. It's really learning those basics, learning those major and minor scales, learning the pentatonics, learning the triads, and then maybe the Dom 7, scale on top of that, and then you kind of understand where everything is, and you're able to play more connectedly, and then you're just applying what you can hear and knowing your knowledge of the fretboard and those scales and putting them all together. So with that in mind, it gave me some hope, because I kind of know what I need to do, and I know that it's just hard work as opposed to some amorphous tricks that I have to pull out of thin air. It's just getting really good at those fundamentals. And then everything else, all the licks that I've seen, all of the different tricks that I see out there are really just based on that. And so if you know that, you're able to kind of finagle your way into all the different licks that you're thinking through, or the different, if you wanted to go blues, you're just kind of messing around with that minor and major third and that flat 7, and kind of goes on and on from there. But it's really much easier once you have that basics, to put on the different lattices and frameworks of the different kind of genres, so to speak. But again, it's really not that complicated. It's just hard, and that's the difference. I feel like I equate it a lot to even the same concept of getting in shape. It's like you can get in shape without a gym in 30 minutes a day. I know, because I do this every day, but it just sucks. You just have to do hard. You have to go and sweat and push your body past some limits and do all kinds of active work for 30 minutes a day. But if you do that for 30 minutes a day, every day, you get in pretty good shape. And so it's kind of the same thing here, where it's like if you learn just your basics inside and out, you have the major and minor scales, and you know where all the different relative note values are, you're kind of good. You're kind of there, and then you just have to be able to connect them fluidly, and that's just kind of practice. And so it's putting in that hard work. So I wanted to talk about quickly 3 things so far that have helped me over the last week or so. And I would say this. I would say over the last 5 years, I've really just been noodling and playing things that I already know. And I've probably gotten 5% better in those 5 years from, as opposed to like maybe the first 3 years playing guitar where I kind of like really felt like I was making, you know, every year I was getting 50% better, 50% better. All of a sudden I just feel like I barely got any better, if anything, maybe 5%, just being a little bit more fluid. In this last week or so, I would say I think that I've gotten 10% better than from when I started. So that's already a pretty big jump in my opinion on something that I've just kind of been stagnant on for a while. And so a couple things that have helped, again, I think number one, understanding what I need to get better at and then just focusing on that. So that's like the main thing. And like I talked about before, it's really just the understanding the note values of where everything, understanding the relative note values for the key that you're playing in and the chord that you're playing on, understanding where the triads are, understanding where those major and minor scales are, and then being able to adjust a few different things to taste, whether you're, you know, if you're playing the blues, then you're doing the dominant 7 thing with the rub on the 3rd. If you're doing different genres, you might be sticking to more of a 1-4-5, blah, blah, blah. If you're doing, I'm not even getting into jazz, but jazz is a whole nother thing. 2-5-1s, blah, blah, blah. So being really clear on what I need to work on, and then targeting those weak spots. So that's the thing that I'm doing now that I used to not do, was I used to just go and play what I already knew. And I knew the pentatonic shapes, and I knew basically how to apply them to different keys. And so I would just kind of noodle around until things sounded okay within those shapes. And instead, I'm focused very much on figuring out where those parts of the practice are, where my brain hurts a little bit, where I have to take time and plod through it, and focusing on those things, and then doing them and working them over and over again, resting, doing them again until they get faster and faster and faster, and really targeting those weak spots, and then kind of moving one by one. And then I'm looking at it sort of like a layer cake. So you start with, for me, I already knew the basic bar chords and I already knew the pentatonics. So I started with the triads, just figuring out where they were all over the neck, trying to figure out where the 1, 3, and 5 are within each of those triads. And then I moved on to making sure I knew how those pentatonics layered over those triads. And then the same thing with the major and minor scales, how those layered over those triads, and then just slowly plotting through, working them, making sure that they're coming like second nature and connecting them. That's still where I'm at right now, and it's taking a lot of time. I gotta tell you, like, I'm getting the triads down pretty well, and that's already helped wonderfully with all kinds of things. Just when I was jamming, I was like, ooh, I was able to kind of take little pieces of chords and make things sound fun, and it's definitely already helped me a lot, as opposed to just playing these big chunky bar chords. And understanding where the scales are layered over top, so that I'm able to kind of flip in and out of hitting a triad, going back to the scale, hitting another triad, going back to the scale over top, connecting that scale to the next scale, blah, blah, blah. And that's seemingly something that will really kind of help elevate from what I used to do, is just run up and down a pentatonic. I'll be able to really attack chord tones during the scale, connect scales a little bit more fluidly, so it's not just like 1 position, 2 position, but I'm going from like 1 to 2 and then hitting a triad, then coming back to 1, then maybe going to 5, coming back to 1. And then hopefully, I'm still kind of working on the major and minor scales, but hopefully then I'll also be able to have those kind of greater, the greater scales that have the 4th and the 7th degree, and then and have those kind of 3-note patterns on the string. I think that'll also help kind of give a little extra life to, with some speed. When you have 3, it's just a little bit faster, and give a little bit more of a different element to kind of a lead play, as opposed to just focusing on the pentatonics. So that's where I'm at, and I know kind of just really working really slowly, figuring out where those major scales are, going slowly through them, trying to understand where I'm at within each of the scales. So being like, oh, here's the root, here's the 3rd, here's the 5th, here I'm playing the 7th. It really sucks. It's like, it takes forever. Every time I play, my brain hurts. I get lost in the fretboard. But every time I do pick it up, it's a little bit better. And so I can see where it could go. And that's the key. I think it's like understanding, okay, I am a little bit better, and I can see where it could go. And that helps me just sit down every day and do the work, as opposed to just like noodling around and having fun. The other thing that's helped me a lot has been changing my environment. So I just leave, you can see this, I just leave a guitar like right in my way. And it's like right in the space that I work, so that the first thing I see when I walk down the stairs is the guitar sitting there, and it's ready to go, and it's already, I have the acoustic here, and I even have I have the electric, which I'm actually playing more for in this scenario. And it's just plugged in, and really all I have to do is press a button, turn it on, and I find that just that small tweak makes me sit down and play, and there's no friction added. It's the first thing I see in the morning. So I try to do it once in the morning, once before I go to bed. I pretty much play once or twice in between then, most of the time, although every once in a while I get a little bit tired of playing scales and it starts to add friction in the brain, and then you start to not want to do it, and it takes some effort and willpower even then. But I try to do it at least twice a day. Here's the thinking behind that. And this is something I've learned from language learning and playing the piano, even when I had to play some hard pieces. This has been something that's really, really insightful, is that it's sort of like before you learn something, it's sort of like your brain is this big forest, and you slowly plod through, let's say, like the first, couple scales that you want to learn. And so it's like you've kind of, and it takes forever, and it's slow, and it feels like you're going to forget it immediately. And it's kind of like you're like putting in position markers for your brain, like this is where I want to go through this forest. And then every time you take a break, your brain starts to be like, okay, it sounds like he wants to do that, go here, and starts to clear a little bit of the path, clear a few trees along that path, getting you from point A to point B from where you told your brain. And then you go down, sit down again, and it feels hard, but it starts to come a little bit faster, and you start to see, oh yeah, that's where that one area I wanted to go, and that tree's no longer in the way, like AKA I can play that line a little bit faster, but I can't connect to that line. And then, so every time you kind of pair this intense focus, and that can even be 15 minutes, of really pushing your brain in a direction that's hard for you, and then rest, and then coming back to it and applying that tough, difficult process again, you start to clear that path more and more and more. And the longer you let it sit, the more the trees kind of grow back in the way, but the more that you kind of come back to it after the rest, the more actually it clears. And so part of the trick is just knowing that it's going to take some time to learn anything difficult, because your brain needs to create the path. And so there's almost no amount of practicing you can do just on one go that will give you that perfect path. You almost have to apply some intensity and trust that your brain's going to start to clear the path for you. Then you come back and it's a little bit easier to see, and then you can walk that path a little bit more, and then your brain's going to clear it even more because it knows that, okay, no, he really does want to go this way. So it starts clearing more and more trees, and then it becomes easier and easier and easier until there's just a path written through the brain. And that's kind of the slow process of learning, and that's something that's worked really well for me in languages. For example, when I'm learning French, you have all this vocabulary, and you kind of practice it one day, and then you go wait a little bit, and then you practice it the next day, and it's a little bit faster, and then all of a sudden you practice it a week later, and you kind of, maybe you had forgotten a few words, but then it quickly reinforces it, and then a month later goes and you remember them all like that. But it's taking this repetition of intensely studying it, resting, sort of forgetting, and studying it again, reminding yourself, resting, and it gets better and better and better every time. And so it's like trusting that process. It's really helpful for me to know that, because it gets frustrating when you feel like you're not getting anywhere within a certain specific practice. Knowing that intensity and application of knowing where you want to go and forcing your brain to get there, even if it's slow, and then resting, knowing that the rest is going to help you over time, and that your brain's going to help fill in some of those gaps. And then it just takes a little bit of push and pull to get there. It's something that changed the way I think about hard practice. So I'm a little bit more able to connect to that idea, because I know that it's just going to take some time, and I will eventually get to where I need to go, as long as I keep putting in the effort, as opposed to feeling like you're stuck and it'll never get there and giving up and moving on to something else. The other thing that I did was I bought a looper pedal, which feels like a little bit like a frivolous purchase, although $100 is a lot, specifically for something that's just for practice. But I think it was important to me, even though I already have, technically I could go plug into my computer and get it looping and do that, but it takes a lot of effort for me to get the computer and I put it in there. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes effort for me to take the computer and set it up and do it every time. And I know myself that if it takes 20 minutes to set up, I'm probably less likely to do it. But the looper pedal, which I have like sitting right there, it's so easy. You literally just click a button and you're able to loop a couple chords, click the button again, and then you can try to jam on top of it. And that's just been something that, because it's so easy, I'm using it all the time. And so it's well worth the money, in my opinion, for something that's going to remove friction and enable you to get to the work that you need to do more frequently. And so it's literally seconds. I just click the pedal, loop some chords, jam over top. It's also super fun. I love doing it. So even though technically I could have done this on my computer in Ableton or in Logic, that setup takes too much time for me to get going and get the whole thing together. And so just removing that friction, having it all right there ready to go, is so helpful for me. The one thing I've learned there is it's easy to fall in the trap again of playing what you already know and having it, because you want to sound good and you want to have fun. And so it's easy to just go, oh, let me play a little progression and then start jamming the A minor pentatonic over top of that. And that feels great, and you kind of know where that is and you can make it sound okay, and it's fun. But reminding myself every time that I'm here to target the weak points, and that's the big thing I want to keep pushing, is that's what I feel like has gotten me that 10% better from where I started to now feeling even 10% better when I got to my jamming sessions and when I was able to do some songwriting even, and use some of the triads within my songwriting. It's because I spent multiple hours sitting there just painstakingly like finding the triads here, there. What is that? Is that a third? Is that a fifth? Is that a one? Doing that slowly over time, sped up, got quicker, much faster. Now it's a little bit more fun. Like when I'm playing, I'm able to quickly throw some triads on top, and I know where the one is, so I can slide up to the two, and I can go from the 3 to the 4 really quickly, and I know where I'm kind of positioned within the pentatonic, so I can flip back into a pentatonic for each of those. It's been really, really fun, and it seems so simple, but it's something that, despite being so simple, just took a lot of effort to get there. And then once it became a little bit more fluid, it became so much more fun to use, and something so simple kind of really opened up enormous amounts of change in my playing already, which is awesome to see. So it stands to show just really focusing on that basics is going to really, really help you build and layer on top. The other thing is I tend to, when I'm learning things, try to expand my focus too much. I just want to sit there and watch video after video and understand how every little piece works and go video, and like really conceptualize it. And what I always end up learning is that that's just a form of procrastination. Just instead of doing the hard work, doing the easy work of watching the next video and seeing how that applies and that applies and that applies. It's a trap that I always fall into, and I still fall into it, and I even fell into it today because it's so fun to think about where you could go and what it could be, and it sucks to sit there with all the things that you don't know and have to plod through it and do the work. That's the shitty part. So really narrowing the focus, being like, instead of being like, okay, if I learn all these scales, I'll be able to know all the modes, and then I'll be able to play Dorian over top of a 2-5-1, blah, blah, blah. Getting rid of that, knowing that that's in the future, and really just focusing on that major scale and understanding what note value is in on each of them. Do I know where my root is here? Do I know where my 3 is here? Do I know how to connect those to the next one? Do I get to position 3? Can I get to position 4? Can I immediately get there? What mistakes am I making through those? Narrowing that focus, once that becomes second nature, then layering the next thing on top and the next basic thing, and sitting there and focusing and doing it. And that's the hard part. But that's the thing that I'm seeing results in this last week. That's the difference between this last week and the 5 years prior, is that I'm sitting there and doing the hard bits and ingraining them into my head, as opposed to like conceptually understanding, oh, this is how it would work. I'm sitting there and being like, okay, now I can really find the D triad on all the different places and I can play it quickly, and it's just second nature. I don't have to think about it. That's the difference, and that takes time. That's taken a week's worth of, an hour a day, pretty much, just doing all of that stuff. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say for now. Again, this is like, I think this is like a week and some into my journey, or like a week or 7 days. So I just wanted to kind of give like a lay of the land about where I'm at and what's helped me, because this is kind of something I wished maybe I could see from other people. I've been in this plateau, and you see all these YouTube videos where it's like this small trick and this small trick, and it's all these very, very niche applications that do sound good in the moment, but don't really give you a roadmap for how to connect things, or how to get better, or how to be kind of speak the language of the guitar in a way. It's almost like giving you stock phrases, being like, here's how to do this, here's how to do this. Instead of being like, oh, I know the grammar, I know how the language works, so I can take any word that I learn and put them together in all kinds of new ways, instead of just having like this one stock phrase and this one stock phrase. You can quickly apply it. That's the difference too, is having it not be such a laborious effort every time, but having it kind of be something that's almost second nature. And that's the thing that takes years. That's why all these guys have been doing this for many, many years, because it just takes time to get that under your belt. But I can say, even with just a week's dedicated effort, you can already see how much better you can get when you dedicate time to the hard stuff. And that's the key. Do the hard things, target your weak points, do the hard things, trust that you'll get better, and consistency. Do it every day, reinforce it. And then over time, it becomes another tool in your tool belt, and you can layer on top. It's hard to layer on top if you haven't already started somewhere. If you don't know the basics, it's hard to layer on top. It's like if you're building a building and you don't have a foundation, or you throw in a shoddy foundation, and then you start to try to build on top. In this case, maybe it's like understanding, how to play over a 2-5-1 and in a 13 chord and a sharp 9. Like you're building on top of something that's going to fall apart, and then the whole thing's going to collapse. As opposed to, if you know all of your basics and you got that big strong foundation, then it's much easier to tack in the different design decor, which is like a 13 sharp 9, blah blah blah, Dom 7 sharp 9. You understand where that's coming from and why, and it's just a simple change of one note on top of the basic that you already know really well, as opposed to this whole amorphous thing that you have to like pull out of thin air. So anyway, long-winded thing. I don't know if this is even helpful for anybody. It's helpful for me though to talk through it, think through some of the things that are working, help reinforce some of the ideas that are working, and give me kind of a moment to think about everything and reflect and make sure that I'm moving in the right direction. But so far I've been really, really pleased with the progress, even though it's been boring work, I will say, and it's been kind of laborious, and I definitely leave practice sessions feeling unenthused and confused and lost within my scales. But it's helpful to know that every time I do come back to it, it actually did sit in there a little bit better in the brain, and I got a little bit better. And then the second time it's even easier, and it just gets easier and easier and easier until it's something you can use. And so it's just doing that every time. That's the goal.